Okay. Welcome to Greyhawk 76. I'm Ken Newquist. Let's talk about our second D&D 2024 session. In our first session, the adventurers intent on getting to Greyhawk hired on with James Fairheight with tales of a lost family treasure that they needed to recover from a copper mine. They went to the copper mine. They fought a What a Weird. They went up against a rival family. The Witherwinds. They killed some of the Witherwinds and charmed the rest. According to their new friend Thorold Witherwind, the Burrow boys were closing in on the mine, accompanied by several of their ogre minions. The Burrow boys being a band of murderous halfling thieves, rogues, and ne'er-do-wells who prey upon transportation, shipping people, generally miserable gangsters on the plain of Greyhawk. So, the adventure started with the party's trickster cleric and his new allies at the mouth of the mine, seeing two ogres flanked by several halflings and apparently led by some gray-skinned, muscle-bound humanoid with enormous... The adventure started with the party's trickster cleric and his new allies at the mouth of the mines, seeing two ogres flanked by several halflings and apparently led by some gray-skinned, muscle-bound humanoid with an enormous greatsword. Rather than advance and confront them in the old, crumbling support buildings at the base of the hill or the switchback leading up to the mines, they decided to lure them into the mines and take the Burrow boy contingent there. What followed was a multi-front battle. The party's illusionist and trickster managed to trick the ogres into the mine and then negotiate them. What followed was a multi-front battle. The party's illusionist and trickster managed to convince the ogres to come into the mine by teasing them and using illusions and such, and then totally negated the ogres through spells and guiles. I didn't even get a chance to attack anybody with them. Meanwhile, the surviving Witherwinds who had initially hid from the Meanwhile, the surviving Witherwinds who had initially hid from the murderous Burrow boys chose an opportune moment to stop hiding and fight, taking down several of the halflings who had snuck into the mines. Meanwhile, the party's battle master, his blade ward up, maneuvered his way outside, seemingly intent on taking down the gray-skinned humanoid and his halfling allies alone. His opponent surprised him, penetrating his defenses with uncannily accurate crossbow shots, criticals. He dropped to the ground and was captured, letting the halfling slip past him into the mine. Once there, they got the drop on James Fairheight, setting up a tense standoff with the gray-skinned humanoid, who the battle master had correctly deduced was a giant kin known as the Goliath, with two of his companions at the mercy of his Burrow boys. The Goliath with two of his companions. So at this point, you've got the battle master with a knife to his throat. You've got James Fairheight with a halfling with a knife at his back. And you've got the Goliath outside in a position to make some demands. So he demanded that the adventurers surrender their coins immediately. And when they didn't, he ordered the halflings to kill James, which they did. And the session ended there with James dead, the battle master incapacitated, and the standoff unresolved. So, lessons learned during this particular session, because the whole point of this is, one, to revisit Greyhawk and have fun there, but the other is to test drive D&D 2024. So what did we learn? First, the alertness feat. This works differently in D&D 2024. It lets you switch initiative with another person, which is pretty cool and often helpful for the PCs. Trip equals shove. So during the game, I wanted the Goliath to trip someone up using his greatsword. We couldn't find an explicit trip rule. We think this is covered by the shove rules on DMG page 377. We're not quite sure. We just ran with it. We imagine we're going to see trip rules in the monster manual when it comes out in February. So whatever, we just rolled with it. So let's talk Blade Ward, which, got a lot of feedback on the podcast. So thanks, folks, for your comments. I do appreciate them, even when you disagree with me. So here's the thing. Blade Ward is a cantrip. You can cast it. It lasts for 10 rounds. And then anybody who attacks you gets a minus 1d4 to their attack roll, which, cool, great for the player, but it's bookkeeping, right? It's more stuff that somebody has to keep track of. And so after our first session, we agreed that the Battlemaster player would be the one who would be keeping track of this. When I attacked someone, he would do the d4 roll. We would see what the subtraction was, and then we would just kind of roll with it. And, I was concerned, right? Like, the player had a really high AC, and it makes it tougher for the NPCs to hit him. Which, that's the point of his character. I'm not trying to undermine that. But it can give rise to a little bit of arms racy stuff. But, here's the thing. Get a couple criticals, doesn't matter. So I, in no way, as a GM, attempted to punish my player for taking Blade Ward. We really want to see how these things work. And I'm not that kind of GM. But Blade Ward couldn't save him. He went out into the fight and he has this high AC. And unfortunately for him, the Halflings and the Battle Master were able to basically get advantage and keep it and just really knocked him on his butt, because these guys are third level, right? They don't have a ton of hit points. They're not quite as squishy as first level, but they still can't take that many hits. Doing it this way with the player managing the dice roll was fine. The math was straightforward. It didn't bog down combat. And honestly, I mean, Blade Ward's fine, right? It is a thing. It's cool. Player enjoyed it. He had fun with this particular build. It's a little bit niche even now, because why would you use this instead of certain other spells? But if you're doing a tank build and you've got one of the feats that allows you to get the cantrips, or if you did a wizard multi-class build, it could be very beneficial to a martial character who's looking to buff up his defense in certain situations. So at the end of the day, Blade Ward worked. I am going to talk about the D&D attention economy in an upcoming episode, because at the end of the day, it's these kinds of little changes that are causing me to be a little bit concerned about where we're going with D&D 2024. So let's talk mastery. Mastery is not what you might have think of. So let's talk mastery. Mastery is not masterwork weapons, which is kind of what I thought it was going to be the first time I saw it. We saw masterwork weapons in 3rd edition, and it was like minor tweaks to the weapon that gave it like a bonus to damage or maybe a bonus to attack because it was a superior weapon. So the last thing I want to talk about is mastery. Mastery is a new concept in D&D 2024 that allows certain character classes like fighter or rogue to take advantage of special features of weapons. Anybody can wield a greatsword, but when someone with mastery wields a greatsword, they can use its graze feature, which means even if they miss, it causes automatic damage to the thing that they were attacking. And that's pretty cool. I used it for the Goliath Battle Master because I wanted to see how it was going to work out. The thing about it is, it's one more thing to keep track of. And so I'm not quite sure how I feel about mastery at this point. I get it. It's a nice little extra for your players to have. I wouldn't want to take that away from them. But at the same time, it's one more thing to remember. It's one more thing to do during combat. And I got to say, I really liked how 5th edition was lean and mean. And, despite all of the other features, I'm sure people who play like Shadow Dark or Castles and Crusades are like, what do you mean 5th edition is lean and mean? He's got all this bloat. But it had narrowed the scope from both 3rd edition and 4th edition to something that was pretty manageable. And in my experience, pretty quick. 5th edition is adding all of these interesting little bits like Blade Ward, like Mastery, and they're cool, but they just add that little bit of something extra. And so in the next episode, I'm going to be talking about the D&D attention economy and how these things impact your ability to keep the game moving at the table. If you're enjoying Greyhawk 76, like and subscribe on YouTube, or go and snag the RSS feed the old-fashioned way at Lair of Secrets.